Just do it. Hare Krishna. Nice beginning, nice kirtan. Is there some way to adjust this so it's less rectangular and a little taller. Electron, not keystone. Not keystone.
The aspect ratio.
Huh?
Aspect ratio.
Whatever you want to do,
Yeah.
but you know what you're doing. But it's not
Hopefully,
keystone.
yeah, it's not keystone for sure. Is this better?
That's better. You gotta go up one more?
I think this is.
That's it, huh? Okay.
That's the maximum.
How do you hit it? Escape. Well, make sure we're doing what the people recommend, our social distancing protocol. Social distancing protocol. You gotta sit somewhere else. Can you see the screen from there?
No.
But you can't. You gotta do the social distancing
I will
program.
sit there then.
Yeah, but she's right next to you.
No, I will sit there maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's do this the way we're supposed to do it for safety's sake.
I can sit close to her.
Okay, so yesterday was Ram Navami, right? Now you're from South India. Your parents are from South India. I learned something yesterday. That people in South India think Ram Navami is the day that Sita and Ram married. Have you heard that before?
No.
Never heard that one
No.
before?
Because appearance day of Rama is
Yeah.
not here.
Yes. Some people in South India think that way. But the marriage of Sita and Ram is on a different day in our Vaishnava calendar. In any case, we've been speaking about, for a whole week, we've been speaking about Ram's pastimes. Of course, it can go far more than a week. But this evening, I thought we would spend some time discussing Vibhishana. And have any of you been to this place, Tirupalani? Anyone? No?
No.
Have you heard of it?
Yes.
You've heard of it. Tell us what you've heard of it.
And this is the place where Rama crossed the bridge, constructed the bridge and crossed the ocean, and where Vibhishana came to surrender.
Okay. It's the second one, not exactly the first one. Are you going to sit down?
Yeah.
You're going to stand up? Okay. Okay. That's just, I have a long arm. Just leave it there. Thanks. Thanks. So it's a celebrated place. It's understood as the place of surrender, because in addition to, as we see in this image here, Vibhishana surrendering to Ram, there's others which we'll narrate at the end. There's supposed to be a little announcement about garlands. Somebody out there said, "I'm nervous. because who knows who handled the flowers before they made the garland? So it's a nice garland. Thank you very much. But I'm gonna request there's no garlands while I'm until the coronavirus thing is over. Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? Okay, so here we go. It's a place of surrender, and the whole of Ramayana, according to the Sri Vaishnava Acharyas, particularly Yamunacharya, Ramayana is a treatise on surrender, and this is the place of surrender. And outstanding, of course, in Ramayana is where Ram accepted the surrender of Vibhishana. So that's our topic for this evening. A little background. This is an interesting painting of Ravan with his 10 heads and 20 arms, shown there playing a musical instrument. This had to do with Ravan getting the name Ravan given to him by Lord Shiva, because he went to visit the abode of Lord Shiva, Mount Kailash, you see in the background, and Nandi wouldn't let him enter, so he, I'll show you who I am, and tried to lift Mount Kailash, and the whole of the mountain started to shake, and Parvati became disturbed. She turned to Lord Shiva. He said, "Don't worry. Can something be done with the control of the sound, because it doesn't sound right?" Someone's checking it?
Yes.
Okay. So the whole of Mount Kailash began to tremble. Lord Shiva said, "No worries," just placed his foot on the mountain. And for 1,000 years, the powerful Ravan had his arms trapped under Mount Kailash. And the veins in his arms were bulging out, and he was in enormous pain, crying out, roaring very loudly. He was advised, music skill, your father taught you, and so why don't you use your veins and use a musical instrument and sing some nice songs in glorification of Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva was very pleased. He gave him some boons, some weapons, and gave him the name Ravana, or he of the terrifying roar. So his half-brother was Kuvera, from the same father, Vishrava. So Vaishravana was his brother's name, meaning hearing distinctly. So they're half-brothers, Kuvera, or Vaishravana, Vaishravana and Ravana. So here's a little picture of the family tree. There at the top, of course, is Brahma, and one of the sons of Brahma was Pulasya. Pulasya married the daughter of the sage Trinabandhu, and Ravan's father Vishrava was born, so third in line from Brahma. And Vishrava had 2 wives. One was married to the daughter of Bharadwaj Muni, and Ravan's father, Vaishravana, was the son. He became Kuvera, but there was this second wife. It's a long story, which I'm not going to narrate. It's very complicated. But a Rakshasa named Sumali, together with his wife, Ketumali, had a number of sons and one his several daughters. And Sumali became really impressed with the opulence of Kuvera, the Pushpaka Vimana, and so forth and so on. And so he, Sumali, sent his daughter to the ashram of Vishrava with the appeal that she be accepted as a wife. And he accepted her as wife, and they had children. One place in Valmiki Ramayana speaks of 4 children, the first 4 you see. By birth, it was Dasagriva. Later, he was given the name Ravana by Lord Shiva. And then 3 others, Kumbhakarna, Vibhishana, and Shurparnaka. Now, Shurparnaka, when she's meeting Ram and Lakshman for the first time, she identifies who she is, and she names Kar and Dushan as brothers. And elsewhere speaks of them as brothers, but there's a specific place in the concluding kanda of Ramayana where Valmiki speaks of 4. So 4 or 6, depending which part you read. We had this long discussion yesterday evening on Ramayana evening. There's so many different versions of Ramayana, it makes your head spin. And even ones that are authorized, and there's different narrations in those authorized ones, what to speak of the other ones. If anybody becomes a little bit familiar with Ramayana knows it's safest to stay with the gold standard of Valmiki Ramayana. But there are some things in Valmiki Ramayana that differ from Srimad Bhagavatam, which is also our gold standard, so it's a little confusing. Which can be simply understood, there's different cycles of the 4 yugas and different appearances of Ram, and then you can just wipe your forehead from perspiration and it's okay. But at least within our disciplic succession, these things are not so, there's not the same volume of commentary from our acharyas about Ramayana as with Bhagavatam. So here we go. Vibhishana, when Vibhishana is mentioned by Shurparnaka to Ram, she speaks of Vibhishana as her pious brother, unlike the rest of us. And somehow he was not just pious, he was a great devotee. And we'll see that shortly. The first we find in Ramayana is Hanuman meeting Vibhishana. And where it shows up so this is Hanuman being able to take any disguise he likes, as when he first met Ram, he was disguised as a Brahmana. So here's Hanuman disguised as a Brahmana meeting Vibhishana. At least that's what the artist has depicted. And the section of Ramayana where this comes is just after he finishes his whole exchange with Sita, and he decides that he wants to meet Ravan and let Ravan have it, like scare the daylights out of him, that he's going to get it for his misdeeds. He happens to pass by one of the palaces where someone inside is reciting Vishnu Sahasranam. It was like, whoa, in Lanka. So he met Vibhishana, had a short conversation, and then he begins these other activities that he did, destroying the garden, defeating the soldiers. After destroying the army of 80,000 of Ravana's soldiers, then Ravan sends Jambumali, and Hanuman kills Jambumali, and then Indrajit is sent with his special weapon, his Shakti weapon that ties up Hanuman. They bring Hanuman before Ravan, and so back and forth. But the Shakti weapon of Indrajit lost its power after some time, and Hanuman says some pretty strong things, and they decide they want to light his tail and punish him. Vibhishana advises, don't kill, you don't kill the messenger. That's not Vedic. Besides, it's not nice. It's just, that's one of the rules, but you can give him some reprimand, that's okay. So the reprimand was lighting his tail, and his tail was used to light the city of Lanka, and there's Hanuman viewing the city of Lanka burning, while the tip of his tail is getting cooled off in the ocean. And when Hanuman goes back and informs everybody, and especially Ram, there's a whole scene of returning to Kishkinda and that scene. Everyone goes again to the place where they can best go to Lanka. There's consideration of how to do that. Meanwhile, back in Lanka, Ravana calls for a meeting with his ministers, because Lanka just got destroyed, or partially destroyed, by one monkey. And the monkey said, there's millions of us as powerful as me, and you've had it, and Ram is invincible, you've had it, you're in big trouble. So he calls his ministers. It's an interesting painting, huh? And the ministers are very enthused to honor Ravana, the power of Ravana, the power of Indrajit, the power of this one, the power of that one, their own strengths, his strengths, nothing to worry about. So they go on like that. And then Ravana's maternal grandfather, so we saw the family tree, who his mother was, and this is his mother's father, maternal grandfather, Malyavana, spoke very clearly, directly, strongly, advising Ravan to return Sita. And he was not inclined. So I'm going to do a little reading now, because the language of how Vibhishana speaks to Ram, to dissuade Ram from the next step, combat with Ram and so forth. There are 3 different sections during this gathering that he's called. When it's Vibhishana's turn to speak, I'm just going to summarize. The main point is return Sita. But he says, you're having kidnapped Sita as a heinous sin, and you will suffer and we will suffer because you're our leader. And Ram didn't cause any harm to you, and his harm to Kara was self-defense. Kara was attacking, and he defeated Kara out of self-defense. So there's no impropriety, but if you want revenge, then you should have fought Ram in battle, not abducting his wife. And he goes on to say, it's a very long section, I just see how powerful was Hanuman. We can travel, Rakshasas can travel with airplane and mantras and some mystic powers, but Hanuman just flew across the ocean and flew back. And he told us, many as powerful as me, and don't underestimate his power. And just, given the situation, there's standard things that Kshatriyas should do for gaining victory when there's a challenge and you haven't exhausted those. So please consider carefully. Ravana oddly becomes silent, very thoughtful, and says, let us convene. I want to think on this overnight. Let us convene our meeting tomorrow morning. So he calls the ministers again the next morning, and there's more of the same. People, Ravan, don't worry about anything. We'll take care of you, and you're powerful, and we're powerful, and who can stop us? Consider all the exploits you've done in the past. You've defeated this one, that one, the other one. No worries. And Vibhishana is invited to speak, and he says, I'm sure you've all seen so many bad omens, and this means, portends very terrible events soon to take place here in Lanka. And Ravan dismisses the omens and says, I'm powerful and no worries. Then the third time, it's another occasion, they come together. Kumbhakarna is invited because Kumbhakarna woke up. He had been asleep for 6 months. And he woke up. So Ravan wanted Kumbhakarna to come into the assembly and say what he wanted to say. So he said some heavy things, very blunt, without any tactfulness. He said, you're asking us after the fact. What's our advice? You already did the deed, and the deed is a sinful deed, and there's going to be consequences for the sinful deed. What you should have done is killed Ram and Lakshman first, and then you could have abducted Sita because she's without a husband, but you abducted the wife of someone, so you've done a very bad deed, and now you want advice? But putting all that aside, you're my brother, and I'm very powerful, and I'll destroy the whole army and Ram and Hanuman and everybody, now that I'm awake. So I'm just going to read what Vibhishana says. With a sad heart, Vibhishana listened to Ravan's misplaced confidence in his own might, as also to the senseless boast of Kumbhakarna. Then he offered his own advice, supported by weighty reasons. Sita is like a mighty serpent. Thoughts about her are the cruel venom that deals instant death to others. That serpent, huge of body, need not sting a man. Its mere touch is fatal. What impelled you to go in search of this serpent? Bring it home and place it in your home. I pray you take her back to Ram before he kills all the Rakshasas. And then he speaks very strongly against person after person amongst the Rakshasas. You, Prahasta, those with wicked hearts are ever inclined to vice and cannot even dream of the world of light. Your plans against Ram will all miscarry, though you and Mahodara and Kumbhakarna and the king himself put your heads together. Can one cross the ocean without even a raft? Ram is adept at anything and everything. And you and I and all our Rakshasas banded together cannot do him the slightest harm. He will sacrifice all other aims of life, but will never give up Dharma. He is the foremost of the warriors. Our king is sunk in the pleasures of senses, cruel by nature. He acts on impulse without forethought. And you, his friends in name, are in reality his worst enemies, forgetting his weaknesses. You encourage his cruel nature and flatter him to his heart's content. You have come to destroy the Rakshasa race. If you are true friends of his, Group yourselves together with one mind and drag him away by the hair of his head, if necessary, from unrighteousness. What I advise is in the best interest of this Lanka and all the Rakshasas that live so happily within its walls, of our Lord and ruler and his countless friends. He may not like it, but we must act together to restore Sita to Ram, even if we have to keep our king under restraint. As Vibhishan, wise as Brihaspati, offered his counsel, Indrajit, the best and bravest of the Rakshasa heroes, heard him and with anger and impatience rebuked his uncle and blah, blah, blah. Indrajit was radiant in his might. No one dare approach him. What he said, he did. Vibhishan himself, no mean warrior, listened to him patiently and again offered advice, pregnant with meaning and most conducive to the interest of his master. But it failed to make any impression on the mind of Indrajit. My dear boy, you are yet a youth. Your intellect has not reached maturity. You are not yet capable of carefully investigating a subject and reaching a sound decision. You rave wildly and foolishly and seek your own destruction. I have been saying again and again, with many strong reasons, that if we oppose Ram, it would be the end of Ravan, his sons, his kin, and his army. But you are obstinate in folly. The son of Ravana, only in name, you are in reality his relentless foe, bent on bringing about death. You would ruin not yourself alone, but him that brought you into this world. Your Majesty, for our many sins and of omission and commission, there is but one remedy. Let us hasten to place at the feet of Ram our wealth, our gems, our ornaments, our garments, our most precious possessions. Let us take back to him Janaki, who is like Mahalakshmi herself. Let us entreat him to forgive us our sins then, and then alone shall we and our lives be in peace and happiness. I can think of no other course than this. Just what Ravana wanted to hear, right? But fearless, and Ravana went into a rage. Ravana's younger brother Vibhishan argues with Ravana that he cannot possibly withstand such an army and should hand over Sita to obtain peace. They disagree, and Vibhishan defects to Ram's camp with 4 ministers. Now, his defecting is pretty far out. They're sitting around a table. Ravana has said, if you weren't my brother, you're dead, but I'll spare your life. But there's no place for you here. You're an enemy in our midst. So Vibhishan and his 4 ministers rise, just like mystic power, and they go directly to meet with Ram. It says it took him 48 minutes. How long is a muhurta? Anybody know? How many minutes is one muhurta? Huh? You don't know. Okay. Something to do with, that's where they get the 48 minutes. So now, as you know, the painting shows it very nicely. He didn't come in for a landing. He stayed hovering in the air. Of course, this painting shows right there is Ram and Lakshman. But he is greeted, they see him coming, so Sugriva, Jambavan, Angada, and this one and that one and the other one, they have this little, like, what should we do? And it's kind of a celebrated section. They disagree. They're all devoted to Ram. It sounds like a Hare Krishna temple, right? They all are devoted to Ram, and they have a different point of view. they don't agree with one another. Familiar territory. So, only when called upon does Hanuman speak, and Hanuman is the only one amongst them that understood. I mean, Sugriva is the most mistrustful. He's come because he knows that Rama is going to be destroyed and he wants to be the next king. It's just self-aggrandizement, and so I don't trust him. And then somebody else says, well, let's accept him, but let's watch him. And then others say, well, how can you watch him, because he'll just be on good behavior until he gets a chance to do his bad stuff. And on and on and on and on and on and on. And Hanuman says, whether he has some selfish motive or not, he's taking shelter of Ram, and Ram will accept him. And this is that place where Ram makes this very celebrated declaration that one who takes shelter of me even once sincerely, from that day forward, I will give him protection and he'll be free from fear. Something like that. So, the Sri Vaishnava Acharyas speak in this way. These 4 ministers in the Sharanagati department, they represent one who's taking shelter and one who is receiving, is giving shelter. So the Sharanagata, there's 2 principles out of the 4 ministers. This is worth remembering. Akinchanatvam, we know what tvam means, having the quality of akinchana. And we know this word akinchana, that's from Queen Kunti's prayers. I possess nothing which is, the grammar is wrong, which I view as my shelter. I possess nothing else, that's what it should be, which I view as my shelter. Akinchanatvam. I don't have any other shelter but Ram. And it says it the other way around. Since I have nowhere else to go to take shelter, I fully repose my shelter-taking spirit in the Sharanya, the person giving me shelter. Ananya Gatitvam. It's not negative and positive of the same thing. I have only one shelter, I don't have any other shelter. And then the person giving shelter, Saralata, he, that's Ram, the one worthy of shelter, he gives shelter to anyone without any consideration of who they are. That's Saralata, simplicity. Very important qualification. And Shakti. He can afford to do the above because he is all-powerful and no one can harm him. So giving shelter, the personality of Godhead being the one who can give shelter, has all power, and he doesn't make discriminations about who's qualified, who's not qualified, birth, education, wealth, position in society, or anything. That's part of what Hanuman's prayers were glorifying, that we've been discussing in the evening sessions. Sarlata. Without any consideration of the background of the person, it's the willingness to take shelter from that person, then he will accept, and he has the power to do so. And the one that he has special affection for is one who I possess nothing which I view as my shelter. That's probably the is should just disappear. I possess nothing which I view as my shelter. Now, in everyday, real life, we have so many, we can call them false shelters. And part of the pain of material life is when those false shelters disappear. They're taken from us, or something, circumstance, somebody's wealth, or someone's family member, or their something, or their prestige, their honor, their something of this world. It's gone. So we have many false shelters. So akinchanatvam is not having such other shelters, but having one complete shelter. So that's a nice lesson. These are nice terms to remember. Akinchanatvam and ananya gatitvam, from the person taking shelter, and when giving shelter, saralata, simplicity, and shakti, the power to give shelter. Here's another old painting. This is Vibhishana in front, the darkish complexion figure. His four ministers are in the background, and some Vanaras and Lakshman and Jambavan and so forth by the sea. So Ram accepts Vibhishana, and Vibhishana becomes very helpful in many, many ways, because Hanuman did his reconnaissance, his spy or intelligence examination, but Vibhishana lived there, so he knows everything. He knows where the fortresses are. He knows everything. So he's guiding Ram in all respects as a service to become victorious over Ravana. But we heard how he spoke. He was a Vaishnava. And we heard that Hanuman heard him chanting Vishnu Sahasranam in his home or palace in Lanka, in the midst of Ravana. So he's not just a circumstantial devotee because he knew Ravana was going to get smashed. He's a devotee. So here's a question. Why did he, if he's such a devotee, why did he stay there? Would you stay there? No. So why did he stay there? Who can say?
Duty?
Huh?
Duty? Duty?
Duty. Describe. What was his duty?
To be the brother of Ravana.
Yeah. It's something like Vidura staying in Hastinapur because he was trying and trying and trying, and when he realized I don't have the capacity to change my brother, he left. He stayed because there was some service for him. And he left when there was no service for him. Here's a quote from Srimad Bhagavatam, specific to Vidura, 113.22 purport. Prabhupada writes, "Saints and sages like Vidura approach such foolish men to awaken them to the real situation, but they, persons like Dhritarashtra and Ravan, take such sadhus and saints as parasites of society, and almost all of them refuse to hear the words of such sadhus and saints, although they welcome show-bottle sadhus and so-called saints who can satisfy their senses. Vidura was not a sadhu to satisfy the ill-gotten sentiment of Dhritarashtra. He was correctly pointing out the real situation of life and how one can save oneself from such catastrophes." So there was some service for him. That was his duty. Try to rectify his brother. Didn't work. He tried. Didn't work. Now, we heard from how Shurparnaka spoke with her brother, and apparently, Rakshasas have this way of speaking with one another that's not very polite. They speak in really severe, harsh tone. So it's not so unbecoming of the Rakshasas to speak really strongly like they speak to one another, but they don't speak the truth like Vibhishana. So because Vibhishana wasn't like the rest of them. Now there's, in this place of surrender, there's two other incidences, both connected with Ramayana, where persons took shelter. Can you think of someone else who may have offended Ram and took shelter of Ram at this place? Samudra. Ram wanted his assistance in crossing the ocean to get to Lanka. So he underwent a fast for 3 days, and Samudra was not responding, and so Ram became angry. And Samudra came and did what we see here. Same location. Same location. Not exactly the spot where the bridge was built, but it's just a place of surrender. And then another thing that happened was, after Vibhishana left, Ravan had sent some spies, because as you remember, Shurpanakha was advising Ravan, you got to have spies. So he sent some spies. And the spies were mixing around, because Rakshasas had the capacity to assume different forms. So they assumed a form, kind of blend in with everybody else. But it was detected. They're not one of us. And so they were brought before Ram. And they surrendered to Ram. And he accepted them. Now they didn't have to. He could have just, go back. But they surrendered to Ram. So this is a celebrated place, a place of surrender, as is the Ramayana, a whole story of surrender to the personality of Godhead and the different elements connected to that process of surrender. Of course, different persons would do this in a different way, but the elements are standard, and Vibhishana is a very special one. This is this standard for us. So let's see if there's some discussion.
Maharaj, I didn't really understood the difference between point 1 and point, like
1 and 2?
And negative.
Well, one is, I have no other shelter and you're my only shelter. One's negative, the other's positive. I have no other shelter, but you are my shelter.
Oh.
I'm not a voidist.
Oh. Good.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj.
Yeah. He's going to check the sound system.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Guru Maharaj, along with Vibhishana, 4 of his followers also came.
Ministers, yeah.
Ministers. And they did not actually ask for shelter, but they were also given shelter
Yeah,
because
sure.
they were favorable to Vibhishana.
Well, because he's their leader, and they were following him. They left to take shelter. They went left to follow their leader, who went left to take shelter and be in his service. So it's not recorded and reminded they say anything or anything like that, but that's their intention.
So can I take that if we also follow the leader, Prabhupada? So we.
But you have to surrender from the heart, so not just follow and close your eyes.
Yeah.
But it's from the heart.
From the heart.
Yeah, that's what surrender is. And then the rest of life's actions follow the heart. Okay. Anyone else? Vibhishana. Yes, I can count on you to have a question or two.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So, like Vibhishana,
Not a little further away.
Vibhishana very fearlessly gave this advice in the whole assembly.
Yeah.
So, how did he realize and when did he realize that Lord Ram is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and he should just surrender, everybody should surrender completely and
There must have been a guru. I have no knowledge of who that was. Someone who he received the mercy of Ram from, the mercy of Bhagavan from. It must have been. And who that is, I don't know.
He's like a lotus in the mud. So my next question is, Maharaj, this about akinchanatvam. So in material world, this is for my personal application, Maharaj, that I struggle a lot, like Kunti Maharani says to Krishna that one who is after wealth, good education, all those things, he can never feelingly call out to you.
Right.
So that sounds very heavy to me, and I feel that there is really no hope, because I certainly tend to go behind these things with regard to my children. They should progress properly, they should be able to live in this material world properly. At the same time, they should take care of their spiritual well-being also. So what should be my consciousness for myself as well as while I'm bringing them up?
Leverage things, everything, that and everything else in the direction of their life, my life is meant for an offering unto Krishna. And it's not, that is to say, those things have their practical application, and the practical application goal is taking full shelter of Krishna. So each of us have our different nature. Let's just take a look at Sudama Brahman. He had a certain nature. And then we'll take a look at Maharaj Ambarish. He had a certain nature. So different in everything in between. So different persons have different natures. So you ask yourself, is my nature, and you ask yourself about each of your children, what is their nature? And to what degree, according to my nature and each child's nature, is there, in order to be peaceful and move contentedly on the path of bhakti, what's the requirement? Not just, for not just for the sake of enjoyment, just for the sake of being peaceful. What's the peaceful standard? So that's, like myself, I'm living a life of sannyas, and I'm not one of the things I heard Prabhupada say, a sannyasi is not one who, when visiting the home of a householder to give the message of Krishna, sees, oh, there's such a nice opulence, maybe I'm missing out on something. But, I'm contented and I'm giving Krishna bhakti, and my situation is this and their situation is that, and that's just fine. I like my situation. So, for yourself, back to your question, what is, in the language of Rupa Goswami, anukolyena krishnanushilanam, where the intention is to please Krishna, or anasaktasya vishayan yatarham upayunjitaha. Yatarham upayunjitaha is translated as according to suitability. So what's suitable for you may not be suitable for your child, or another family, or another person, or another person. So what is according to suitability? That's kind of vague. What does it mean, according to suitability? Well, even in your own life, what may be needed for you to be peaceful may have been that, and today it's this, and tomorrow it's something else. It's so you can, there's some equilibrium, the necessities are there, and my mind is not overly disturbed this way and overly disturbed. Not too much attachment, not too much renunciation. You know that verse from Uddhava Gita. That person is a suitable candidate. So for me, or for you, first person me, but for you, what is it, my peaceful situation is this. I'd like to reduce that stuff. I'd like to go in that direction, not artificially, but according to suitability. And then, my dependence, according to suitability. There's some lines that are just like, no, not okay. But according to suitability otherwise. Allowing that there's also going to be different stages and phases of life and so forth and so on. According to suitability. But the important, there's two important parts. Accept something, but not for the purpose of sense gratification, but for the purpose of service to Krishna. That's the operative principle. And aspire to simplify. How many pair of shoes do I need? Or whatever.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Quick question, Maharaj. So, thank you for the nice class, Maharaj. I was just thinking about modern day and how, there's a lot of Ravanas ruling different nations today.
Little Ravanas.
Yeah. And, along with them, there's a lot of Vibhishanas also advising them. And if you take it at, a national level, it's, the presidents or the prime ministers and, advisors to them. And the same thing when you come down to a level of like a company or, a boss and somebody reporting to him. There's a Ravana and a Vibhishana there as well. So what is your advice in terms of like what can we take as Vibhishanas when you put somebody in the role of a Vibhishana, what lessons can they learn from the actual Vibhishana that they can apply when dealing with such a Ravana who in spite of what is seemingly right for Vibhishana may not be right for the Ravana. So there's a lot of like conflicting interest because Vibhishana is.
I think I would feel more comfortable because every time I hear you making this comparison, I'm a little uncomfortable because they're tiny Ravanas, and they're not Vibhishanas. Ministers to government leaders today are not Vibhishanas. They're, just smaller Ravanas. Factually. Largely. There's certainly there's exception, but largely. So, divine and demoniac nature, and the conflict that is always there, the divine and demoniac nature. So what are the divine to do to influence as best they can those with demoniac nature, and they may be in the ruling position, or commonly they're in the ruling position. Well, step back from that question and take a look at what, this is my response. Take a look at what Srila Vyasadeva did. Srila Vyasadeva saw ahead of time what would be going on, and he decided make the Vedic wisdom available in a written form for people in the world. And similarly, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in addition to the chanting of the holy name, he invested power, potency, and Goswamis to write literature and then distribute the literature. So the process of hearing and chanting is as much as you or the divine natured persons can become invested with spiritual power. To the degree that they can be capable of doing something to assist the misguided demoniac persons. Purity is the force, in other words, and so it's not easy to change the heart and mind of someone who is invested in tamas and rajas and tamas. So being a bearer of bhakti, and the more the merrier. Work collaboratively with others who are the divine nature and other devotees who move in different circles. In the workplace, it's not easy because there's probably not too many devotees in the same workplace. So the effect is going to be reduced or minimal, but collectively, thinking on the bigger scale, the influence of the devotee population in the world is dramatic. Of course, the influence of the asura population world is also dramatic. And there's this, as Prabhupada describes, since the beginning of time, this conflict between the two, divine and demoniac nature. So to improve the divine nature in the world is be divine and work closely with others who are so inclined, and that in the manner that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given us. This, especially this process of hearing and chanting. Make your own heart pure, and purity is the first, and then you and others like you, us, we, can have that beneficial impact. Without purity, we won't. Even if it's not completely heart-changing, but just having an impact on the world that's dark. We're tiny. And the force of the material energy is very strong. But what are we going to do? We get crushed. But the spiritual potency is stronger than material potency. We take shelter of the spiritual potency, and to whatever degree we're empowered with spiritual potency, we can make a difference in the spiritualization of whatever the situation is that we're in, the workplace or wherever. I mean, what's her name was running for Tulsi Gabbard?
Yeah.
I mean, she's Vaishnava, running for president. That's unheard of. I mean, how did that happen? Prabhupada. And Prabhupada to somebody, and then somebody to her, and then here she is, running for president. You know, so just keep going. You know, there's a lot of other people that are not Vaishnava, that are not divine. Even people advising those that are the not divine are not divine. And the not divine people surround themselves with not divine people. That's just nature, birds of a feather.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you. Actually, your previous response mostly answered the question that I had, but I will still ask the question. We see at Vibhishana, and to me it seems that he had a lot of courage to.
That's putting it mildly.
Yes, Maharaj. I was thinking that, as you said, that we are not Vibhishanas, and the people we are interacting with are much, much smaller than Ravana. But I was still thinking that besides courage, if there is anything else that we need to have.
Purity.
Purity, yeah. That was, yeah.
Yeah, Maharaj, I had the question related to what Amara Mataji asked, that surrender, I mean, sometimes it becomes very heavy. So
The word surrender, or
words and being a grahastha, like
being a grahastha?
how should we balance, like what real surrender is, what real devotion is, what kind of things we should do or not do. For example, many times I feel, okay, why I am doing this, I should read Bhagavatam only. So when it comes to the activities, like suppose cooking is there, so a housewife cannot excuse herself from the cooking, never. So we have to balance, like we have to.
No, it's not balance. I don't like this word balance.
We have to cook anyways.
Yeah, okay, but it's not that. The objection is not about cooking. The objection is about balance. So that balance means there's this over here and there's that over there, and how do I balance? And my answer to that is this over here and that over there both have the same purpose.
Same purpose, yeah.
So when you're cooking or you're thising or thating, it's the same purpose. It's not a balance. Maybe it's time management, but it's not balance.
Cooking is also devotion.
Of course, and one can cook in gluttony, and one can cook in devotion. So this is part of my life, just like your daughter's answer about why did Vibhishana stay, duty, because this is a decision of your life that you have made. Fine. So now let me carry out what my duty is, and my real duty is to please Krishna. So let me do the cooking, and so then I can do my hearing when I'm cooking, and my devotion to while I'm cooking. There's not a balance. So what do I need to do during other things? While I'm doing that, and while I'm doing other things, that devotion and just seamlessly move from one thing to the next thing to the next thing out of devotion. That's a life of bhakti. So now back to this. Well, I should be reading the Bhagavatam. No, that's time management. This much of the day I'm going to read Bhagavatam, and this much of the day I'm going to take a bath, and this much of the day I'm going to cook, and this much of the day I'm going to clean the house, and this much of the day I'm going to do whatever the other things that I prepare for something. And they're all under one umbrella, not balanced. It's time management
Yeah.
for Krishna.
Yeah, it is clear to me. And one more question, like few months back I was in Mayapur, and then there I met some German devotee, and she was talking to me, and she said that you are now more than 50, so as per to this ashrama's system, so you must be in your vanprastha now. So is that you are not staying with the family now, and you are, completely devoted to your devotional life? So I could not explain her that why I am living with my family now. She said, now you should be your Guru Maharaj. He conducted full seminar about this. About this Varnashram Dharma. So then I said, okay, I will think and let you know, but I still live with my family and I am trying to follow. I did not leave my kids, and I am doing whatever I have to do till now.
It's, getting kicked in the seat of the pants is sometimes nice. I don't know who this person is and who she thinks she is, but speaking like that to her superior sounds like impertinent to me, without even knowing you and telling you what you should be doing. And
No, she was curious. She said you like.
oh, come on.
She said that you are like Indian, you know all these things better. So are you still living with your family?
She's talking down to you, talking like she's humble. Sounds to me.
Okay.
What does Vanaprastha look like? Or, who really knows what Vanaprastha looks like? Who is doing it? So, it's not well defined, put it that way. There's principles, but your age is not the only thing. You have a daughter that's in your care, and so when she's at the stage of her life where she's in someone else's care, then you can think differently. Right now you can't think differently.
No, even like she said, your son is married. Do you still visit her, or he comes, or you have responsibility
mind your own
for
business.
him?
When Vanaprastha doesn't mean you divorce your children. That's not what it means. She's you've got a misconception.
Yeah, that's what I thought, but I wanted to clarify this.
Okay, well I'm clarifying.
Yeah.
She's disrespectful to speak to you in the way that she was speaking to you, and she doesn't have a proper understanding of what Vanaprastha is. It's not even a utopian idea what Vanaprastha is. It's a gradual, incremental something, leveraging one's life less that way and more this way. Going on pilgrimage to holy places with your husband, or spending some time where the husband may go and spend some time doing this and doing that and coming back, and it's not switch it to the off position. Not like that. That's ridiculous. It's immature. She's got her own ideas. That's nice. Let her live her own ideas instead of pushing her ideas on somebody that's older than her. I'm sorry. I never met the person. I don't like the sound of it.
She keeps in touch with me. She sends pictures of Mayapur.
So that's nice. Spend some time in Mayapur.
Yeah.
You spend some time in Mayapur. Fantastic. I think I'll spend some more time in Mayapur. I just hope I don't meet you again. I'm sorry.
I have a question.
What's up here?
Yeah, about the Kinchana
Kinchanatvam.
Kinchanatvam. I feel like I know that there are a lot of false shelters out there, and I know that they're temporary, like they're there and then they're not. I know that.
Good.
But I feel like my condition is a little lower than both the Maravataji and my mom. I think that the issue for me, I think, is that I want to enjoy. And that's the condition that I'm in.
That's
just,
honest.
So I feel like,
Congratulations for being honest.
you are. I mean, I don't know if that, yeah. But,
So now, do you want to stay there, or do you want to gently and progressively move from there?
I feel like that's the issue. I feel like I theoretically in my head, it's like, you know, obviously you want to move towards that
Right.
goal. That's what I've heard. That's what I've grown up hearing. That's where you should be. But the condition that I'm in, I want to enjoy.
Okay. Here's what two things what Krishna says to Uddhava in the Uddhava Gita section. One, a candidate for bhakti is one who is neither too much attached nor too much detached. Too much attached or too much detached. The too much detached is impersonalist, and too much attached is the materialist. So a candidate for bhakti is one who's neither too much attached or too much detached. So you're a candidate for bhakti. So you're just saying, I'm attached. I have this. I know, and this is where I'm at right now. Then another verse where Krishna speaks to Uddhava is, with such a devotee, they know that if I engage in activities of the senses, interacting with sense objects with a mood of enjoyment, with the intention of enjoyment, there's going to be some misery. But, so I accept there's going to be some misery. And I regret, there's degrees of regret also, but I regret this lingering tendency, but here I go, knowing there's going to be some misery along the way. And I'm hankering to get to that stage where that hankering for sense enjoyment subsides. So it's if you want to hear more on this topic, we had one of our Gita Nagari retreats was on that topic. That was the key verse. Remember?
I think so.
And the theme was acceptance and progress.
Mm-hmm.
So the part that you spoke, that's the acceptance part. It's good. To pretend to yourself or to others something else, that's silly. So, self-honesty, and then, okay, now, for me, what's a realistic progress? If, it's in my system because I learned it since childhood, but, that's not where I am right now. So, if it's a principle that isn't revolting to me, because materialists find that just simply revolting.
Yes.
Yeah. And for a person like you, it's not simply revolting. It's an ideal, and it's far from where I am right now. So for you or for somebody else, in your situation, many young people, not just grew up in the Hare Krishna family, but young people are in a similar position of attraction and not really fully contented with that. There's a higher happiness, there's a higher reality, and not really sure how to get there, and not really sure I really want to leave behind. So it's not unfamiliar territory, as you know, for people your age to be in that space. So now what? What's a doable step? What's something that I can do? Like kirtan, that's something you can do, and you enjoy it. You enjoy it. So enjoy it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, think of some other things that are pleasing to Krishna, and so it's whatever the percentage is that's pleasing to Krishna consciousness, and then what's pleasing to me consciousness, that is pleasing to Krishna. And, let me grow that pleasing to Krishna consciousness in this activity that I like, and whatever the other things that you like. You do those things.
Right.
Knowing, with faith, that's going to help me move down this path of losing that attraction for being the enjoyer of the temporary. Because I know it's a losing deal. Not only is temporary, it's full of misery. It looks like that the other thing happens, and I keep doing it because I have this. So, but it's filled with misery. Look around, filled with misery. You look inside, filled with misery. It's not a place of happiness. So let me move from it, but not artificially. Let me move incrementally. And so, what are some of the other things? Okay, well, I like whatever the other things are. I like reading stories, or I like whatever do you like.
I feel like where I am right now, I feel like if someone told me to wash the pots in the kitchen, I could do that.
Sure.
Service, like any service, I could do it.
Okay.
That's where I feel like I am.
Okay, fine. And in addition, the fact that you're doing, here's what Jiva Goswami writes in Canto 6, Chapter 1, text number something towards the beginning. It's just the feeling very contented to do service. That's a seed that helps bring bhakti about, especially when you connect that service to your devotional family. So the pots are going to be Krishna's pots because they're going to be used for cooking for Krishna.
Right.
So it's not like your design, it's just the atmosphere that Krishna has placed you in. You're very fortunate. And then, so whatever the other things are that you like, you're happy to do it. So service, great. Do service. Anything that's connected with sacred sound, hearing, reading, remembering something connected with sound, spiritual sound, that's especially beneficial. Even if, like, let's just say, I don't know what, read a page of Bhagavatam every day. Read a paragraph of Bhagavatam. Read something every day. And, gradually developing a liking, or, there's so many stories.
Right.
Read a storybook, the biography of Prabhupada's life. Wow, it's really nice. Or, reading together. I know young people, they read together for 20 minutes. 2 people. They're selective about who their friends are, and they found a friend, and they're reading together for 20 minutes. And they like it. They like it so much they do it every day. Great. What else do you like? There's something, consciously select some things that are in the direction of light. Or, remembering Krishna, or remembering Krishna's devotees. Or, Krishna will smile. Be happy knowing Krishna will smile. Do some of that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
There's a couple
We
of
probably have some online
Oh,
questions.
yes.
Go ahead, ask. You're the
Thank you.
Get the microphone.
One follow-up question, pretty much to the same topic. Would it be fair then to say that the problem is not with enjoyment, but the problem is with attachment to enjoyment?
The problem is with enjoyment, because enjoyment carries with the connotation of sense enjoyment. The enjoyment, spiritual enjoyment is real enjoyment, but commonly the enjoyment tendency is sense gratification. Like, here's the object, here's my senses, woo woo woo. yummy or whatever. It's about me, not about love. It's about me, and me means my senses. So enjoyment carries that connotation in common speech.
Thank you, Maharaj.
There's transcendental enjoyment that's quite different.
There's some online. You have those
Yeah,
also?
I have a couple.
Okay. So you can finish it. There's more on YouTube.
Okay.
This question is from Gargi Mataji. There is the example of Bhishma in Mahabharata, who stays on,
Who did what?
who stayed. He didn't
Yes,
quit.
yes, he
He
stayed.
stayed. But still considered a devotee. But in the case where we have Vibhishana who actually lives and acts on the path of Dharma, what is the difference between?
Bhishma is one of the 12 Mahajans. So if we're going to make a comparison, he's in the better position, or he's the superlative person. So it's not just leaving is the standard of that makes you a better Vaishnava. Now, the reason that he stayed is stated right in Mahabharata, the external reason. And it's stated in Bhagavad Gita. Krishna uses the word avaricious because he was being maintained by the Kauravas. He felt obliged. Now there's higher principles. That's a dharmic principle, but there's higher dharmic principles. But, this man's a demon. I don't stay loyal to a demon, especially when there's a decisive act is required. So, but he stayed for another reason, for several other reasons. Krishna's in his heart, and Krishna was inspiring him to stay. In part because of chivalrous rasa, that's a deeper understanding, but Krishna liked combat, and so he was going to give combat. Anyway, if it's not that Vibhishana would have demonstrated he was a superior devotee if he had left than by staying. From a transcendental dharma perspective, he should have left that company of Dushasana and the rest. He didn't. By principle of dharma, that was not the right thing to do. But he did for a lower dharma principle, and ultimately to share with Krishna the chivalrous rasa. Okay.
This question is from Gayatri Mataji. She is asking, when did Vibhishana stop trying to rectify Ravana?
When he left.
If situation as such arise in our life, how does one know when to stop rectifying the person like Ravana?
Well, if it's a person like Ravana, you don't even need to try. Impossible. But you give a sincere effort, and you try to purify yourself, and you do a lot of praying, and it takes intelligence. Krishna will give you intelligence when the bell rings. Like, I'm trying to do some service, but it's just not effective. So I think I'm going to take up some other service. So that's intelligence that comes from Krishna. It depends on the circumstance and your own capacity.
Follow-up question. Also, what happens when Vibhishana in me wants to take shelter, but there is also Ravana in me too, preventing me from surrendering?
Well, Ravana wasn't preventing him surrendering, because that's a matter of heart. He was surrendered even when he was in Lanka, what to speak of when he left Lanka. That was his heart.
The question is, within the same person there is Vibhishana and Ravana, like good, the place where the heart says, I want to take shelter, and also there is a place where I want to enjoy.
Are you clear what the question is? Because I'm not. You're not articulating it well if you are clear.
What she is saying is, within us there is in the heart there is, we want to take shelter of Krishna.
We have two sides.
We have two sides. One side wants to take shelter.
The other part wants to enjoy.
Yes. So she calls one side as Vibhishana and the other side as Ravana.
That's within your own heart.
Within our own heart.
Okay. Now?
So now, what if the other Ravana side is more powerful, more stronger?
Well, why is it? Why? Because we're investing energy in it. That's why. So you withdraw energy from it. You invest energy in the other side. Nasate vitate bhavo nabhavo vitate santaha. It's very simple. Chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita is withdraw from that and invest in this. You have something. Online?
Yes, Maharaj. There's a couple questions by Kirti Prabhu. Hare Krishna Maharaj, what is the background of Vibhishana? How did he end up being a devotee?
That was Amar's question. Who was his guru? How did he get bhakti? You get bhakti from a bhakta. I don't know. That was pretty ecstatic.
There's one more not related to the class today. Is that okay if I ask that? How are Wali and Sugriva brothers? I heard they were twins. Is this true?
No. They have different fathers. Indra is the sun god.
And did they have Vanara parents like Kesari and Anjana were Hanuman's
Yes.
parents?
Yes. The detail of that I don't know, but they have different fathers and different mothers.
That's it.
There are two questions out of the topic, is that?
Both questions from Nataraja Krishna. My brother. So there are two personalities who left this world when the Supreme Lord was personally present before them. One was Bhishma Dev in Mahabharata and Jatayu in Ramayana. And also
Haridas Thakur.
Haridas Thakur in Chaitanya Charitamrita.
Yeah.
So, and Krishna also, the Supreme Lord also got involved in their personal rights. Are these personalities the same?
No.
Okay, that was the first question. And then the next question is, why did the Lord conduct his pastimes by placing Mother Sita on the forefront when the teachings say to protect women?
In what way did he place her in the forefront, please? I don't either. When they were traveling in the forest, she wasn't in the forefront. And where was she in the forefront? It was always protect. Lakshman, you stay here and protect Sita. No, I'll do this. It's not left neglected or in the forefront, to my understanding. I'd be interested to hear it. So we're done. Thank you very much. Prabhupada ki jai.
His Holiness Srila Rama Swami Maharaj ki
Jai.